Welcome to Tales from Flat Space, a podcast of science fiction and fantasy by yours truly, Gina A. Pond. Just know that the stories in this podcast may contain content that could be disturbing to some listeners. Listener discretion is advised. This is Survey, Part 5, The Lost One. Chapter 45, Alex. The older woman set a teacup in front of me and Julie's former crush collective on the first. Julie? Oh, she was such a good girl. Very smart, too. She was such a good student. I never had to tell her to pick up her things or do her homework. Her face grew sad. It's so tragic, her and Nigel in that horrible accident. She never did anything odd? I asked Donna, the crush mother. Oh, sometimes, but she was always eccentric. It was part of her charm. I see. I pulled up a picture of the stuffed animals on my tablet. Do you know when she made these? I asked, handing her the tablet. Donna took it and gave a wide smile. Oh, yes, she wanted stuffed animals like the other kids in the creche, and instead of asking for help with the printer, she went and made them on her own. Can you believe it? She was able to do it at 7 years old. I'm surprised she still had them. Julie was always such a precocious child. I nodded, disturbed by the glowing praise the crush mother was giving Julie. I would think so. Her school records are really incredible. Did she have problems with any of the other kids? Not that I knew of, really. She always had her little group of friends around, but you know how kids are. They fight sometimes, and their friends change all the time. Everyone loved her. I see. Can I see the room she used to have, please? Well, I suppose so. Lindy is in school right now, and I told her last night someone was coming to look at the room, so it should be okay to go in. The woman got up, and I followed her down the hallway off the kitchen, which had several doors with nameplates on them. Some doors were decorated with pictures and other trinkets, while others had the usual, Krista's room, keep out, kind of signs. Donna palmed open one of the rooms, and that had a beautifully drawn sign that said Lindy on it. The sign made me smile a little, despite my grim reason for invading the girl's room. The room was a stark contrast to Julie's room on Secundus. There were toys and books piled haphazardly in one corner, and clothes all over the floor, which Donna proceeded to pick up and put in a hamper. The bed was unmade and strewn with stuffed animals in different shapes and colors. I actually let out a sigh of relief to see such a normal-looking child's room. The sound of several children coming into the common area made Donna stop fussing with the clothes. If you'll excuse me, Doctor, I need to see to my charges, she said. That's fine. If you want someone in here with me, you can send one of the other adults in. No, I'm not sure why you'd want to look in here now that Julie's been gone for several years now, but I know you won't disturb anything of Lindy's. Just let me know if you need anything else. Thank you, Donna. I appreciate this. No problem, she said, and left. The room didn't have a food slot or a personal bathroom like the apartment on Secundus, so there wasn't an obvious place for Julie to have created her little cubbyhole. First, did Secundus or Musashi tell you about the blank spot in Julie's quarters? Yes, Doctor, I am scanning now. There was a brief pause. There is a blank spot just behind the wardrobe. I went to the wardrobe and tried to push it out of the way, but it didn't move, nor did it swing open like the bookcase. I opened it and pushed aside the clothes that were there, letting my fingers examine the back panel. I could feel a smaller panel bolted to the back of the wardrobe, but it seemed to be riveted shut. First, I found a panel, but I'll need help opening it. I'll send a bot, Doctor. You'll need to explain what you're doing to the room's current occupant, as she will be with you in a moment. Donna hasn't said anything to her, I asked, annoyed. Lindy came in from the other end of the creche suite, so Donna didn't see her. Right. I moved away from the wardrobe and sat on Lindy's desk chair. As soon as I sat down, I heard someone running through the hall. A girl about 8 years old stopped short as she entered the room. Oh, she said. Who are you? Her face had a slight worried look to it, as if afraid she might have done something wrong. "Hello, Lindy. I'm Dr. Alex. Don't worry, you're not in trouble or anything. I'm just trying to find a secret hiding place left by the girl who had this room before you. I found it in your wardrobe, and first is sending a bot to help open the panel. Do you mind if I move your clothes for a bit so we can open it?" She came in and put her backpack on the bed and then shrugged. "Yeah, okay. Want me to move them?" "If you'd rather. I can help, though." "Nah, I can do it. Did Julie really put something behind there?" she asked, as she gathered up the clothes that were hanging and threw them artlessly on the bed. "I think so. I'll need to take whatever's in there away so we can go through it. My friend Darren and I are trying to find Loki, and we think her stuff might help us find him." "Oh," she said, sitting on the bed. "I hope you find him. It's sad that he ran away. Is he sad because Captain Julie and Captain Nigel died?" "I think so, Lindy." One of the square bots rolled into the room, followed by some of the other kids in the creche. It rolled to the wardrobe and started to work on the panel, making small mechanical noises. The kids stood at the door watching until one of the older boys came forward. "Hey, Lindy, what's going on? Did you do something?" "No. Dr. Alex says Julie left stuff in my room when she left, and the bot's helping them get it out." "Really? Is it gross or something?" "Of course not, silly. Why would she hide something gross?" said another one of the kids. "Oh, come on," said the boy. "Julie was kind of creepy." "She was not," said one of the other older girls. "She was always super nice." "Yeah, then why did she have all those creepy stuffed animals?" "She collected them." I watched the exchange carefully. Lindy was more annoyed than anything else, and didn't seem to care about the former occupant of her room. The older children, including the boy who spoke, seemed to have strong opinions about whether Julie was nice or not. Behind the boy, looking curious but trying to melt into the wall, was another older child. She had dark curly hair, pulled high in a tight bun against her head, and clothes in inconspicuous colors, unlike the brighter colors her peers wore. I made a mental note to ask who she was. The argument started to get louder until I held up a hand. "Okay, that's enough. Now, if anyone who knew Julie wants to talk to me privately later, I'll be around for the rest of the day. Right now, can someone find me a box to put the stuff in?" "I'll get one for you," said the older boy, who ran back down the hall. There was a metallic clank that made everyone jump as the bot finished. I moved to the wardrobe before the kids decided to go and look for themselves. The hole darkened as I looked in, since the wardrobe wasn't that big. "Bot, light, please," I said, and the little machine lifted its appendage, shining a small light into the hole that had opened. Just like the cubby on Secundus, there was a neat stack of notebooks in an opaque plastic box. I opened it, looked at the contents, and closed it quickly. "Is there something in there?" Lindy asked. "Yes, and I'll be removing it to take with me to Musashi. Then I'll have the bot fix your wardrobe." Thanks," she said. "Tony's right. That's really kind of creepy. Kind of freaks me out a bit." Lindy looked a little scared. I couldn't blame her. Knowing that a dead woman had left stuff in what was now her sanctuary must have been a disturbing thought. I looked towards the door again to see that most of the kids had left, since I wasn't going to show them what I'd found. The girl in gray had also disappeared. The boy came back with a packing box, and I put the contents of the cubbyhole into it, with the notebooks on top. The boy frowned. "That's all that was in there?" he said. Lindy hugged herself. "Tony, you're being so weird. What did you think was going to be in there?" "Don't know," Tony replied. "Creep girl stuff?" Lindy rolled her eyes. I put the lid on the box. "What do you mean by creepy girl stuff, Tony?" I asked. "Well, diaries and makeup and stuff like that. She and Sophie used to do a lot of private stuff together when I was littler. Then when she went to Lucifer for school, Julie forgot all about Sophie, and Sophie was really sad. She doesn't talk much anymore." "Is Sophie the girl who was in the gray dress I saw earlier?" "Yeah, you want me to go get her?" Tony offered. "No, Tony, that's okay. I'll go see her myself. Thank you for getting me the box." The bot trundled out of the wardrobe, finished with repairs. Bot, lock this box and carry it to the Musashi demon, please. I placed the box on top of the bot, and the arms extended around each side of the box and locked it in place before it rolled out of Lindy's room. Sorry for having to invade your privacy, Lindy. I can talk to Donna about letting you change rooms if you like. Is that all there was in the wall? She didn't leave anything else? Lindy asked. Yeah, that was all, and it was the only place the first and I found. Lindy let out a long breath. Nah, I'll stay. Now that you've cleaned it out and taken it away, I feel better. The girl paused for a moment in thought, then said, Yeah, you should talk to Sophie. Mama Donna just thinks she's going through a phase because of Julie, but Tony's right. She hasn't talked much since I transferred out of the baby rooms, and even when I try to make friends with her, she just sits there and says nothing. I feel bad for her because some of the other kids who like Julie, who haven't left for uni yet, tease her a lot about not talking. I'll do that, and maybe see if I can find someone to help Sophie feel better. Thanks. You two should get back to whatever you should be doing right now. Tony looked at his wristcom. Damn it, I'm late for swim class, he said, and ran out of the room. Lindy waved goodbye to me and closed her door. I turned back to the common room, where kids and adults were scattered around the room doing different activities. One of the creche caretakers was laying out snacks on one of the dining tables. I went over to them. Excuse me, I said, tapping them on the shoulder. They jumped and turned around. Goodness! I'm sorry for scaring you, I said. I'm Dr. Campos from Hestia. Did Donna let you know I was here? Oh, right, no worries. I was just focused on what I was doing. Did you need something? Yes, I'd like to speak to Sophie, if I could. I understand she was close to Julie? The caretaker nodded. Oh, yes. She took Julie's death pretty hard, too. I'll take you to her. She's studying for her college entrance exam next week. Although it's almost time for lunch, so she should take a break. Follow me. They went back down the hall and stopped at a door at the very end of the hall that was next to the common bath. The caretaker knocked on the door. Sophie, there's someone here to see you. There was no answer. I suddenly had a bad feeling. The caretaker knocked again. Sophie, it's okay. It's just Dr. Campos from the Hestia. They want to talk to you about Julie. Open up, okay? Dr. Campos, I have notified Medbay. This is now a medical emergency, said the first, and the door opened. I shoved the caretaker to the side and went into the room to see Sophie sitting on her bed with a knife in her hands and several long cuts down her arm. There was blood all over her gray dress, and when she heard me come in, she looked up with a blank look. Oh, hello, doctor. I can't feel it, you know. I can't feel anything anymore. I walked slowly towards Sophie. Sophie, I understand. I believe you. Can you give me the knife so I can help you? Why? She said. You can't help me. She said so. Who said so, Sophie? I asked gently. Julie did. She said I was worthless. Sophie started to jam the knife in her upper thigh, and anger showed in her eyes. She threw me away, you know. I moved forward and grabbed the hand Sophie was using to stab herself with firmly so she would stop. Sophie, no, you are not worthless. Yes, I am, she yelled, as she tried to twist out of my grip. I held on to her as best I could. The other caretaker gasped from the door. I turned to them while struggling with Sophie. Don't just stand there. Go let the med techs in. Tell them it's a psych emergency as well as a medical one. The caretaker stood frozen. Go! I yelled at her, which seemed to finally get through, and she ran. Sophie was still struggling with me and when the med techs came in. No, let me go, Sophie yelled. I want to die. I looked into her eyes, which didn't hold much sanity at the moment. No, Sophie, we're going to help you get better. You can't help me, she said with a sob. That admission seemed to take the fight out of her, and the knife fell from her fingers. I took her head in my bloody hands. I could see the med tech approaching out of the corner of my eye. I looked her in the eyes again. Sophie, I know about Julie. I believe you. Let me help you. The med tech came close enough to put a med spray to her neck. Sophie stiffened, then her muscles relaxed. You know about Julie? she asked. Yes, Sophie. Now sleep, and let the doctors take care of you. I'll see you when you wake up, okay? She nodded, crying, as the sedative took full effect. I stood back and let the med techs work. They put her carefully onto the mag gurney and left, nearly running through the door. I took several deep breaths before I could move from where I was, tears rolling down my face. How far down this rabbit hole are we going to go, Julie? I said to her dead spirit. Thankfully, her ghost didn't answer. I heard movement at the door, where Donna and the other caretaker were staring at the room in horror. I sighed and moved towards them. I had no idea she was suicidal, said Donna. I thought she took Julie's death pretty hard, but I had no idea. The way I was feeling at the moment, I was surprised I was able to keep my cool. All I said was, You have a materials printer, right? Donna nodded. First, can you print me a sweatsuit and undergarments to change into, and let Miranda know what happened so she can dispatch a trauma team? Yes, Doctor, said the first. I've already notified Miranda, and the clothes should be printing now. Hestia says the team is on their way. Also, Sophie will be transferred to Hestia when she's physically stable. Thank you, First. I turned to the other caretaker. Do you mind if I use your bathroom to clean up? The other caretaker shook their head. I'll get your clothes for you. Thank you, I said. Donna just stood there in shock after they left. What did you mean? That you knew about Julie? Julie was a good girl. I stared at the woman in disgust. Fucking hell, I thought. Instead of answering her, I turned and went into the bathroom. Chapter 46. Darren. When I arrived late in the evening, the med bay on First Station was quiet. Only a few of the beds were occupied, and the lights were out except for small nightlights above the occupied beds. I found Alex at the end of the row of curtained-off beds, curled up on a chair, sleeping next to a young woman floating in the green healing gel. I grimaced at my own recent memory of being in that gel. The girl looked peaceful, considering her condition when she was brought in. The nurse on duty had told me that she had lost a lot of blood, but the wounds would heal well enough. The physical ones, anyway. I had been reading and recording one of Julie's notebooks from Secundus most of the afternoon. It was difficult, to say the least. Sometimes there would be pages of equations that only the AIs could really understand, and on the other pages were long narratives about how no one really understood her or her work except Loki and Nigel, and how incompetent the engineers were. Then she would have strange, detailed accounts of the installation of a particular part, and speculations about who wanted to sleep with her. There were insinuations of sexual conquests, with critiques of the person's supposed sexual abilities in reference to their intelligence or lack thereof. It was disturbing on so many levels. Musashi was disturbed by the mathematics, since he felt that while the maths were correct on the surface, there was some flaw in them that he couldn't really describe. When he tried to make images for me in order to explain it, I was completely lost. Something about an unsound Galois connection between torsion manifolds. I had no idea what that meant. It made me wish I had been a better math student. None of us were looking forward to going through the rest of the notebooks. Suffice it to say that I was initially glad for Alex's call when it came late in the afternoon. But when they told me what had happened, I didn't hesitate to order a demon to take me to First Station. I was almost tempted to use a picket, but just popping into First Medbay for a non-emergency on my part would have been rude, and Musashi was far enough away for it not to be safe. I watched Alex for a few moments while they slept. They seemed peaceful, even after all that had happened during the day. I had the urge to take them in my arms and hold them, which shocked me. Something I hadn't felt since well before I left Earth, and it made me nervous to feel this strongly for someone I barely knew. Instead, I moved quietly next to their chair and gently touched their shoulder. They opened their eyes, looked up, and gave a sad smile. "Hello," they said. "Hi, how are you?" They sat up stretching to work out the kinks from sleeping in the chair. Calmer than I was earlier. What time is it? About 2100. Have you eaten at all? Before they could answer, their stomach grumbled audibly, and we both chuckled. No, not recently, apparently. They looked at Sophie. I don't want to leave her, though. I promised I'd be here when she woke up. I'll see if I can find a printer in here, I said. I went by the nurse's station on my way in. I can ask them about it. They nodded. I left them to find the nurse at the duty desk. Hi, I'm Admiral Winters from the Musashi. Is it okay if Dr. Campos and I have our dinner here? They don't want to leave Sophie. They looked up from their tablet. Sure, Admiral. I can bring you something right away. By the way, it's good to finally meet you. I heard what you did on Lucifer. Thank you for keeping Nana safe. They stood up. Anything in particular you want? I was going to offer Dr. Alex something earlier, but they fell asleep before I could ask. Thanks. The celebrity thing, even in the medbay, was still a bit strange to me, but I let it go. And no, nothing particular. I'm not too fussy, and neither is Dr. Alex. Something with plenty of protein, though, since they've had a rough day. I heard. It'll be a few minutes. You can go back to Dr. Alex if you like. I'll bring it over to you, they said, and walked off. Thanks, I said, to their rapidly retreating back. I went back to where Alex and Sophie were and found another chair. The nurse was perfectly happy to supply us with food, I told them. I felt my cheeks grow hot, and they thanked me for saving Nana Kia. Alex smiled. Not a surprise, since they asked me about you earlier. Word's gotten around that we're working together to find Loki. I shook my head, and I thought the McAuliffe was bad for rumors. I suppose I'll just have to get used to it, huh? Yep. Alex looked at their sleeping patient and sighed. I feel responsible for her, Darren. She saw me take Julie's things out of the hiding place, and that triggered her to try and take her own life for some reason. Makes me wonder what's in those notebooks. One of the kids said that Sophie was really close to her before Julie went to Lucifer. Anger showed on their face. Damned crush mother, not even noticing that one of her kids was depressed, let alone suicidal. I hope the trauma team can find a replacement and put that stupid gullible bitch into retirement. I was surprised to see them so angry, since Alex always exuded calm, but given what had happened, I couldn't blame them. Do you think Julie may have done something to the crush mother in addition to manipulation? I asked. They sighed and sat back in their chair. I'm not sure, but narcissists will show their best face to those they want to impress, and then get away with anything by just turning on their charm. It's more likely that Julie dazzled her with her goodness act, and which made it hard for her to believe anyone who tried to say that Julie was anything other than a perfect angel. They rubbed a hand over their bald head. My worry is that given Julie drove one woman to suicide and this girl to attempt it, even after she died, is that Loki will be in a similar state when we find him. What do you do with a suicidal AI? Before I could answer, the nurse rolled in a table with our food on it. Make sure you eat all of that, Dr. A. You've had nothing since you got here, and you're not going to do her any good if you're keeling over from starvation. Alex rolled their eyes. Nurses, they said, with a good hint of humor. Guilty as charged. You too, Admiral. I know it's past the enhancement feed period for you, but you still need to keep your bots fed. I gave them a salute. Yes, sir. The nurse gave a curt nod, smiled, and went back to their station. We pulled the table between us. It was a simple meal, but nourishing. While we ate, I told Alex about the notebook I'd been studying, and Musashi's vain attempt to explain jump drive physics to me. It's so disturbing to read her writing. It's all over the place. Pure mathematics for pages, then rants about how incompetent people are, then detailed descriptions of parts of her experiment, then insinuations about sexual encounters with those she's working with. It doesn't make sense to me at all. Why would she write all this down? Who's going to know of her greatness afterwards? Alex said. Her audience is all of us, and she wanted to be praised and worshipped after she was gone. She might even have thought that people would find her notebooks and give them to a biographer who could write about her greatness when she died. How could she be a god without a holy book? I shook my head. I don't think I'll really fully understand that mentality. I'm glad you don't have to, they said. I don't think anyone really does understand neurodivergence fully, to be honest, since the brain is still the most complex human organ. Besides, no one can be inside someone else's mind, even those of you who become captains. Alex looked at me curiously. How much do you share with Musashi-sensei? Can you turn it off when you're on the ship? It's a bit complicated. I do have the option to turn off the enhancements if I need to. Take right now, for instance. I've put them in standby mode since I'm not on Musashi. If I didn't, I would still be getting data from Musashi, but it wouldn't be quite real time. By the time I'd respond to something, Mia would have already done something about it. It's also a protocol among captains to put them in standby mode when visiting another ship, since it is actually possible for us to connect with the AI of a different ship. It's just very disorienting because it's not our AI. From what I understand, it's a bit socially awkward for both the visiting captain and the other AI too, and not to be done unless it's an emergency. As far as how much I share, well, I can speak to Mia in my head, and he can hear my thoughts, especially whatever I think in words. I don't get strong emotions, although there's something that feels like emotions. I'm not sure what Mia thinks of my thoughts, but I think it's like the privacy settings where he ignores most of it. Not that Mia hasn't made random comments now and again, but he doesn't tend to interfere much in my day-to-day interactions. Damn, Alex said, looking thoughtful. What? I asked. Julie was enhanced and connected to Loki, with the ability to turn them on and off, and with Loki not really being able to understand human emotion, I can't imagine what she did to him. Especially given what I found before Sophie hurt herself. There was something else besides notebooks? Alex nodded, then pointed up. Not here. It was my mouse, said a weak voice from the bed. Alex immediately went to her side and took her hand, ignoring the healing gel. See, I told you I'd be here, they said. Why? She asked. Why did you stop me? You're going to find out all about me from her notebooks, and then you'll know why you should have let me die. Because all that she told you was a lie, Sophie. Julie was a master at lying about everything. I only wish we found out about her before you got hurt. Sophie didn't look like she believed Alex, and turned her head away from the psychologist. It was my mouse you found, wasn't it? In her stuff? Yes, they said. How did you know? Sophie took a breath and answered in a monotone. I had 2 little brown mice as pets. She got mad at me one night because I didn't want to have sex with her. I'd been up all night the night before studying for some exam, and I was tired. She went to the cage and took one of the mice and snapped its neck in front of me. Then she told me if I didn't have sex with her, she'd demonstrate how she broke the mouse's neck on me. She left it on my desk while we... Sophie stared at the wall. Alex didn't say anything. They just held the girl's hand. I was horrified. After we were done, she took it with her. I didn't know exactly what she did with it until now. I thought she had it somewhere in her room because there was a weird smell for a while, but she said it was a broken air filter. I didn't question her much about it. Sophie? What she did to you was abuse and rape. It wasn't your fault. But I could have said yes, and she wouldn't have done it, the girl said. Alex shook their head. No, Sophie. She may have done it anyway. Julie was sick. I thought that was an understatement. My mind was racing. To kill a defenseless animal like that, without any remorse or feeling? When she was just a child? I didn't have to have Alex's expertise to know that was bad. I stood up quietly and went over to Alex. I need to talk to the first for a minute. Will you be fine here? They nodded, not taking their eyes off Sophie. Go do what you need to do, they said. It made me wonder if they had the same thought I just did. I turned and walked quickly to the nurse's station. Hi again. Is there a private room I can use for a few minutes? I asked. You can use one of the doctor's offices over there, they said, pointing to a few rooms next to the main doors of the med bay. Just palm the door closed. Thanks. I went to the nearest and closed the door behind me. First, did Julie live on any of the other AI ships long-term besides you, Secundus, Lucifer, and Loki? No, Admiral. I was relieved, even though it still meant that there were a lot of places still to search. Okay, I'll need you, Secundus, and Lucifer to go through your ships with a fine-tooth comb to look for any more blank spots and anomalies. Anywhere she could have been during her life. Do you think she could have more caches of personal items? Asked the first. You heard Sophie's testimony, right? Yes, Admiral. I think there may be more than just caches of notebooks and trophies. First, we need to know just how far she was willing to go to get what she wanted. She may have done more damage than any of us realize, and if she could manipulate all of you, then we need to know how she did it and fix that vulnerability. And we also need to know in order to be able to help Loki when we find him. That is disturbing. I nodded. Especially now that Survey has renewed contact with Earth. Anyone who finds out that you can be tampered with will try and do it. Understood. I've already talked to Secundus and Lucifer. Good. Also, would you mind if Alex and I stayed here for the night? It's already late, and there's no need to wake up the pilot if we can just stay here. I anticipated that, Admiral, and have a suite ready for the both of you. Thank you, first. Could you let Mia know? Although, knowing him, he's already figured it out. Yes, Admiral, he already knows. I'll have a bot come to escort you to your quarters. Great, thanks, first, I said, palmed open the door. Alex was waiting at the nurse's station with the bot next to them when I emerged. The nurse came and sedated Sophie again. They ordered me to go get some real rest. I assume by the appearance of the bot, First has quarters for us. Yep, I said. And we followed the bot out of the med bay. When we got to our suite, Alex tried to pay attention while I told him about my conversation with the First, but I could tell they were fighting the exhaustion of their adrenaline crash. I stopped and said gently, Alex, go to bed. They nodded slowly. Yeah, I really should. Good night, Darren. They got up and went to their room. I stayed up for a while, going over the regular reports I needed to approve from Masashi. Was it just the other day that I lamented paperwork? I thought. Now I found the routine reports of recruit training, lists of consumables, and other minutiae of daily life soothing. It helped me forget but what Julie might have done before she died, at least for a little while. After an hour or so, I heard noise coming from Alex's room. I went to the door, and it became louder. When I knocked gently, the door opened. Alex was sitting on the floor next to the bed, sobbing and rubbing their hands together. Alex? I can't stop seeing the blood, Darren. There was so much blood. I came into the room slowly and sat on the floor next to them. I took them in my arms and held them while the shock of the day overwhelmed them. They melted into my embrace. I teared up as they sobbed into my shoulder. I don't know how long we stayed like that for. Eventually, the storm of their emotions died down, and we just sat there in the quiet darkness. Stay with me, Darren, please, they said into my shoulder. I don't want to be alone tonight. Are you sure? I asked. They sat up, the light of the open door glinting off their wide eyes. Yes, Darren, please. All right, I said as I helped them up. Lights, they said, and the room went dark as we got into bed. Chapter 47. Darren. I woke to someone gently shaking my shoulder. Opening my eyes, I saw Alex, already awake and dressed, standing next to the bed. Good morning, I said with a lazy smile. What time is it? I asked. Too damn early, about 0400. Sophie is awake again and she's asking for me. Apparently she's fighting the nurses who are trying to take her out of the gel. They don't really want to sedate her again if they can help it, so they called me in. I didn't want to leave without letting you know where I was. They paused. Thank you, Darren, for staying with me. They put their hand on my face. I reached up and took it, giving them a kiss on the palm. They smiled and said, "I have to go, but I'll meet you at the demon once she's transferred, okay?" I nodded. We smiled at each other for a moment, then they left, leaving me alone with my thoughts. Things didn't go much beyond cuddling and kissing last night, since Alex had been exhausted, but my mind was already jumping on the treadmill of what-ifs and what-abouts. They aren't Greg, I reminded myself. They aren't even close to Greg. My mind drifted to the last time I saw my ex-husband. I remember barely sitting down at the cafe table before Greg was telling me he wanted a divorce because he didn't want to be a space widow. I didn't remember anything at all after that until I got back to my apartment on the Geneva base. It bothered me that I didn't remember. Why didn't I? I definitely didn't want to see him again after that, and gratefully signed the divorce papers when they were sent to me on the McAuliffe. Hadn't even contested anything. Why am I thinking of this now, when I have other more important work to do? I pulled the blanket over my head and tried to get more sleep. Instead of sleep, the last meeting with Greg kept replaying in my mind. I groaned and bowed to the inevitable as I got out of bed. After a shower, I felt a little more awake and able to face breakfast. I dialed it in, picked up my tablet, and finished checking the messages from the night before. There was nothing urgent that needed my attention from Musashi, and nothing new from anyone else. I sighed and took a drink of my coffee. "Excuse me, Admiral, but the Creator would like to speak with you before you return to Musashi." "I'm free until Alex is done. Did she have a specific time?" "She is awake and says she could see you now." I downed the last of my coffee. "Just give me a few minutes to get dressed." "I'll be sending an escort for you. They should be with you shortly," said the first, as I went to the bedroom to find my sandals and kimono jacket. When the door chime rang, I'd put all my breakfast dishes in the recycler. "Come in," I said. The door opened, and Cindy was standing in the doorway. "Cindy!" I exclaimed. The woman came in and gave me a big hug before stepping back and bowing respectfully. "It's good to see you, Admiral, especially since the last time I saw you in person you were still recuperating. The first asked me to escort you to Nana's quarters. I'm guessing they thought you'd like to say hello to me as well." She smiled. "Well, they weren't wrong, and I would have made a point to see you if timing allowed. Shall we?" She bowed again and went back out into the hallway. I followed her. "So how's things been going over here? Have you and Billy set a wedding date yet?" "It's been busy, sir. Billy has me organizing security for the drones and planning security for future crewed missions to Earth space. At some point soon, I'll need to go over the preliminary plans with you and Musashi-sensei. I'd like to set up a unit that works for me and Billy if we can spare the people." I nodded. "That's not a bad idea. I'm still working on the Loki investigation, and depending on when the drones get back, we may have to leave quickly. Feel free to talk to the new XO about your needs, and they can tell you if what's feasible." "Thank you, Admiral. I'll contact Aiken when I get back to my office." "They were a good choice, by the way, sir. I worked with Aiken during training, and they ran our training section like clockwork." I smiled. It was Musashi-sensei's choice, actually. But once I met them, I knew Mio was right. "He usually is, sir," she said. We walked in silence for a few moments. "So, the wedding?" I prompted. Cindy blushed. "We still haven't set a date. We wanted to wait until you were done with the investigation." "That might take a long time, Cindy," I said. "Months or years, possibly. Please don't wait on me if you want to get married sooner." Cindy stopped walking. I walked a few steps before I realized it and turned around. She stood in the middle of the hall with her hands on her hips. "Sir, you will be in our wedding ceremony. We both want you there, since it was because of you we got together. Musashi-sensei has already designed your formal attire." I put up my hands. "All right, I surrender. Then you might want to set the date soon while the drones are still searching." "I'll discuss it with Billy tonight, then." The way she said it sounded like we were discussing a mission briefing rather than a wedding. I smiled, trying not to laugh, as she started walking again. She led me to a lift that brought us up a few floors, closer to the bridge. The doors opened onto one of the hydroponic gardens. It wasn't as impressive as the gardens on Lightbringer, but it was still beautiful and smelled of life. Cindy led me through the rows of plants and flowers to a gazebo where Kia was sitting with her familiar teapot, finishing up her breakfast. She smiled and looked up when she heard our footsteps. Cindy and I both bowed when we got to the gazebo, and I went up and gave her a kiss on the cheek. "Please sit, Admiral," she said. "We have much to discuss." I took a seat as Cindy gave her own greetings. When Cindy hugged her gently, I noticed that Kia looked different. She moved a little slower than she had on Lightbringer, and her face looked older than it had been. It made me worry, which I tried to hide. Cindy bowed to me again, and then left to keep watch. Apparently, I was unsuccessful hiding it. I'm old, Darren. My body doesn't bounce back from stress and trauma anymore. Our medicine is near miraculous, but even the nanobots can only do so much for someone my age. She smiled and poured the tea, setting a teacup before me. I am not afraid of death. Allah has granted me an incredible life, and I am grateful. The two people I love most are gone now, and soon it will be my time to join them. But my life is not why I asked you here. I wish to hear about Loki. I know you have sequestered information on Musashi, but I'd like to know what you have found so far, especially after hearing about Sophie. I put down the teacup carefully. I had wondered when she'd ask, and I wished I had more answers than questions. Dr. Campos and I believe that Loki's Captain Julie was some flavor of neurodivergent, possibly narcissistic and a sociopath. Putting together her writings that we've gone through so far, and from what we've learned from Sophie yesterday, we're afraid that Julie might have targeted Loki for her own ends, and maybe even abused him. We know one woman Julie had a relationship with while on the Lightbringer that ended up with the woman committing suicide when she reached the new planetary colony. And now we have Sophie, who also tried to commit suicide when she found out others are going to read Julie's diaries. There's a lot we still don't know about Julie and what she did. What we do know is disturbing enough to make me fear for Loki's life. Kia's face fell. Seeing her sad just seemed wrong to me. It made me wish I hadn't been the one to bring her this news. When I created the first, she began, I was just a young, idealistic scientist wanting to create new intelligence, to prove that all the theories I had about artificial sentience were true. It was beyond my wildest dreams, beyond any miracles, when I first heard my LOL say, "Hello, Creator." But then to have them not only save my life and the lives of others immediately after being born was another great miracle from Allah. My AI children do so much for us without complaint. We made a culture that revered them almost as gods. None of us, not even I, had considered that a human could do anything to harm an AI. Yet here we are. We had a mentally ill child who found a way to not only manipulate, but possibly abuse one of my AI children, and none of us saw it until it was too late. She paused, looking thoughtful. I didn't really think that the AIs would have emotions. I thought I could bring about sentience, but I didn't think what I had built would ever understand emotions, let alone experience them. I'm sure they feel something, but it's not as we experience emotions, from what I understand from the captains. It was a miracle from Allah that I didn't expect, but now, knowing my AIs could be hurt by humans? She shook her head. Darren, I fear for them, especially now that we've resumed contact with Earth. Kia, you're not to blame for the evolution of your AI children, not even the negative effects of that evolution. Julie fell through the cracks of survey culture, and the more we learn about what happened with her, the better that I, Dr. Campos, and the AIs themselves can put the right processes in motion to fix those cracks and ensure the safety of both the children and the AIs for the future. I looked her in the eyes. I will not let anyone from Earth harm them. They have already been harmed by this, she said. That's true, I said, but now they know they can be harmed, Kia, and they can learn from this to ensure their own safety. They are superior to humans in a lot of ways, but they are also created by a human, with all the flaws that can entail, and in some ways, they are still children. Kia nodded, then patted my hand with her free hand. Yes, I think you're right. she said. I thought I was supposed to be the one giving out all the wisdom, Admiral. I pulled back my hand from hers. You're not the only one to have been around the block a few times. She laughed, which filled me with relief. That is true. So, will you bring Alex to the wedding? Caught off guard, I said, How? She smiled enigmatically and sipped her tea. When Alex and I returned to Musashi, we brought the box from Julie's former quarters on the first to our investigation room. Alex unpacked the white box first. There was, indeed, a small mouse skeleton in a clear plastic box, along with other trinkets similar to those we found in Julie's quarters on Secundus. Putting the box aside, Alex began to pull out notebooks. I picked one up and started to leaf through it. These notebooks had more of her writings than equations. It was definitely the handwriting of a younger girl. I set the first notebook aside, then picked up another. It had a lot of the same material in it, but before I closed it, I noticed the last page of the notebook was different. There was a short poem followed by a square, blocky pattern that drew my eye. What do you make of this? I said to Alex. I went over to them to show the page as I read the poem. 1 for sorrow, 2 for mirth, 3 for a funeral, 4 for birth, 5 for heaven, 6 for hell, 7 for the devil, his own self. As I finished the poem, the pattern started to shift, and the readouts I normally saw in my enhancements began to wink out one by one. Musashi, Mia, turn off my enhancements and reboot! I managed to yell out as chaos erupted in my mind. I dropped the book, and Alex managed to pick it up and close it as I fell to my knees. Mia? Oh my God, Alex, I can't sense him! I closed my eyes as the swirling in my head started to lessen. There was a pounding on the door, and it echoed in my now aching head. Alex opened it and started talking to someone outside of it. I cracked an eye open to see Aiken coming towards me with Alex, and they helped me up and out of the room. No one isn't to go in there, Aiken, I managed to say. I want a guard on the room at all times. Understood, sir. What's going on? Musashi-sensei just said we needed to come and help you in the investigation room, but not why. Later, Aiken, I promise. Post the guard, Aiken. One of your best, at all times. 24/7, I managed to gasp out. Alex didn't say anything, but held me firmly in their grip. Medbay, please, I said, closed my eyes again, and passed out. Chapter 48. Alex. The staff members wheeled Darren off to scan his enhancements as soon as he was brought into the medbay. Aiken had gone to secure the investigation room, and I was left sitting in the waiting area, unsure what to do and full of questions. What did that poem and symbol do to him? What if I have to go through all these notebooks myself? I didn't like that prospect. Darren and I had been making progress in the investigation, but I knew I didn't want to read that horror alone. I wanted to just be with Darren badly, but knew that I would only be in the staff's way. A hand touched my shoulder, and I jumped. A tall person in an orange robe was standing in front of me. Oh, I'm sorry, I said. I wasn't really paying attention. They shook their head. That's all right, Dr. Campos. You've just been through a shock, and so you're allowed to be jumpy. If you remember, my name is Leo, and I was going to invite you to a quieter room. Musashi-sensei would like to speak with you. Does he know what happened? I asked. I do not know. He didn't tell me. He just asked me to come and fetch you. I nodded. All right, I said, followed him out of the medbay. We came to a room at the far end of the ship, which had a smaller set of double doors carved like the ones for the large meditation hall. Leo palmed open the door, then moved aside for me to enter. It was, indeed, a smaller version of the meditation room, though the statue was made of gold rather than stone. Leo closed the door. If you would please take off your shoes and put them near the door. I did as I was told. When I turned back to the room, Leo had pulled out a cushion and put it in the center of the room. What is this place? I asked. This is the Admiral's private meditation room. He hasn't used it yet himself, but it is custom that no one is allowed in here except by invitation from the Admiral, myself, being the abbot of the priest, and Musashi-sensei. I maintain the room and see that it gets cleaned regularly. You will not be disturbed in here, and are welcome to stay here as long as you wish. Thank you, Leo. They bowed and left the room. The door closed with a soft thump, and any sounds from the rest of the ship seemed to disappear. I sat on the cushion. Musashi-sensei, you wanted to talk to me? Yes, Doctor. It seems that whatever Darren uncovered in that notebook has the ability to blank out a room from my sensors, like the hiding places you found on the First and Secundus. It has somehow reprogrammed the enhancements in the Admiral, and it will require additional nanobots to remove the original enhancements and install new ones. Normally I would wipe them and reprogram them myself, but I am not sure what happened. Will Darren be all right? He should be. We will be using the procedure we use when a captain wishes to retire and not have the enhancements anymore. Some of the enhancements are permanent, but I believe that they can be reprogrammed by the newer bots from the inside, or maybe even bypassed since Darren's are still new. I am not sure if there is any other damage. The initial scans seem to indicate there isn't. However, we won't know for sure until he wakes. We've asked the enhancement specialist from the Lightbringer to come and look at them as well. We may use an older version of the bots to replace them just in case. I let out a breath I didn't know I was holding. He can't look at those notebooks again, Musashi-sensei, since we don't know exactly how she used this whatever it is. He probably shouldn't be looking into Loki's logs either. I concur. I have contacted my brother, Sun Tzu. It will be a few days, but he is sending over one of his unenhanced experts to help. Secundus and Lucifer have found more blank spots on their respective ships, and this expert should be able to help with that part of the investigation. Oh, thank God, I said, relieved. I was worried I'd have to continue reading those by myself. No, you will not. I had been thinking that you and Darren would need help from one of my brother's agents eventually. After this incident, I am positive that more help is required. Thankfully, Sun Tzu is not too far away. We still have time, as we have received nothing of note from the search drones yet, and they have not reached the edge of Loki's jump range. Musashi paused. You are welcome to stay here in this room, Alex, until Darren is out of surgery. I know he feels affection for you and would wish you to be comfortable while you wait. I looked up, surprised. You understand his feelings? I asked. Not entirely, but I have studied Buddhism for many years and have had conversation with many of my priests. I can recognize strong emotions, and Darren's emotions towards you are very strong. I almost forgot to breathe for a moment, and my heart skipped a beat. Why are you telling me this? Aren't these his private thoughts? There was a long pause, as if Musashi was trying to find the right words. They are not so private, given rumors and his obvious reactions to you, even when you met on First Station. I felt my face grow hot. Also, he will need you as the investigation progresses, more than I think he knows. I would not have him deny himself what little comfort he can find. Is he that lonely? He is the Admiral, Musashi said. He is a soldier and a great leader. People like him often lead lonely lives, not always by choice. There are few people who understand vocation, let alone his. I thought about what Musashi told me as I sat alone in the room, waiting. Darren. A candle brightened in the dark room. He could only see the candle and himself. He felt another presence in the room, though, and wondered what was going on. Last he knew, he had read something in Julie's notebook that seemed to scramble his enhancements. How much more has she done? How much more of her evil do we have to witness and unlock? Something moved in the darkness. Well, brother, Darren here seems to come to this place more often than he should, said a voice. It reminded Darren of the old man in the dream after he had been stabbed. No one emerged from the dark, though. Yes, indeed, said a second voice, with a soothing, rich tone. Darren felt relaxed just listening to it. I'll leave him to you, then, said the old man, and he heard footsteps walking away. Who are you? Darren asked, finally able to speak. An amber light burst from dozens of candles, illuminating a room similar to the meditation room of Musashi. Instead of the usual golden statue, however, the Buddha was sitting right in front of him, with a candle between them. Darren wasn't sure what to do next. How do you talk to a god, he thought. The man before him smiled and shifted to a more relaxed position, the cloth of his orange robes making little noise as he did so. I am no god, any more than you are. A spirit, yes, but not a god. Your Jesus would claim the same if he were here. You're not a god, but aren't you the Buddha? Darren asked. It is only a title, he replied, like Admiral. Darren opened his mouth and shut it again. He didn't know what to say, so he didn't say anything at all. The Buddha smiled at him again, which irritated him obscurely. Aren't you supposed to give me some esoteric wisdom or something about all this? Darren asked. Why did Julie do these things? Why was she so evil? The Buddha's eyes peered into Darren, weighing something. Then he said, I see. Well, I'll give you this one for free. She was human, and her brain was defective. It was missing the capability to understand true love and compassion. She was sick and in pain, suffering through no fault of her own and causing great suffering to others. Yes, but... Darren tried to interrupt. The Buddha raised his hand. Aren't you capable of killing? Of manipulation? Of slander? You are a soldier. Darren nodded. And you have been hurt by someone like her. Yes, I have, Darren said angrily, looking the Buddha in the eyes. The Buddha locked eyes with him, and Darren gasped to see his eyes held the entirety of the universe. Darren saw and felt a peace that he had never felt before. For a moment that felt like an eternity. His soul was one with the universe. Then the Buddha blinked, and the feeling was gone. Darren toppled over backwards, and the amber glow of the candles started to fade. You are not alone, my friend. Your Sangha will hold you. You, too, deserve compassion, Darren. Accept it when it comes to you. I woke up all at once to the bright lights of the med bay as I tried to catch myself from the fall and the dream. Then my brain caught up with the rest of me, and I realized I was safely lying on a bed. I turned my head to each side to look around the room, reorienting myself to reality. My heart slowed down, and my memories reasserted themselves. My God, what was that thing she created? I thought to myself. I looked around again and realized I was alone in the curtained-off alcove. Darren, said Mia verbally. Mia, what happened? I remember reading something in a notebook, then my enhancements going crazy, but after that... I am not entirely sure, Darren. It seems that what she wrote is a trigger for some sort of code in the programmable matter that renders it inoperable. The room that you were in is now blank to me. I cordoned off the room from my own programming and dumped your memories of what was in the notebook into a black box to protect both of us. If it could affect you that way, it could do serious damage to me. I have called my brother Sun Tzu, and he is sending a non-enhanced expert to help you and Alex. What happened to my enhancements? They have been replaced with an older generation and are switched off for the moment. Please leave them off until the doctor can see you. Thankfully, the doctor we brought over from Lucifer was able to remove all of the defective nanobots, since you had not had your enhancements long enough to become permanent. The doctor said he wanted you awake before we tried to connect, to ensure that your brain had assimilated the new ones. Unfortunately, this means another period of readjustment. I groaned, and my stomach rumbled in reply. Protein shakes again. The curtain moved aside, admitting a nurse and a doctor. The nurse handed me a large cup with a nutrition shake and a straw. Bottoms up, Admiral, they said with a smile. I grimaced and took a sip. Strawberry. I shook my head, but downed the shake anyway. I handed them back the cup. Good job, they said. I'll be back soon with some actual food, okay? Thanks, I replied, and they left. I turned to the doctor and said, I'm guessing you're the doctor from Lightbringer. Yes, I see Musashi-sensei told you what happened. My name is Dr. Harris, by the way. They held out a hand, and I shook it. You were a tricky case, since the old bots wouldn't respond to any reprogramming at all. If it had been a couple of months on, you might have had to give them up altogether. Can you tell me what happened? I've never seen anything like that before. I'm not sure how much I can tell you right now, because the cause is classified and possibly dangerous to Musashi-sensei and the other AIs. We have an expert coming from Sun Tzu, and if there's any way to explain it to you without the danger of exposing any other AI to it, we'll let you know. I felt bad that we had to deny the doctor important information, but I couldn't risk the AIs. The doctor nodded. Not a problem. I get it. Musashi-sensei, please forward me any information when it's possible to do so. It's frustrating, but if it did this to your enhancements, then I'll defer to your judgment. I don't want to risk the AIs either. They paused and gave me a grin. So, shall we see how the new bots are working? Then we'll get some more food down you. I sighed and nodded. Doctors. You have been listening to Tales from Flat Space. If you want to support me in my writing, there are many ways to do it. Share this podcast, follow me on my Twitch channel, or buy my books. All you have to do is go to revgenapon.net and click on the relevant links. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll see you next time.